Okay. So good evening, everyone. I am not the leader in this room. Certainly just because I think, we're going to get a feel for the subgroup, the whole work group concept, but I live in Hunter Mill, so I am absolutely here to observe and learn. It's an open discussion. I do want to give the committee members, we should give committee members, I think, the opportunity to speak first and then open it up to everyone else. So if anybody wants to start, take it away.
I'm just going to hop around and join to the extent I have any control over this. I could hear voices but not see faces. That was weird, and now I can't see anything.
Lisa, can you hear?
There we go.
We can hear you, Lisa.
Okay.
Can't see you, but
we can't see
you.
anything. We just have a dark screen.
That's
We ended up beamed into Sully. So.
Oops. We can see both you and Jerry and hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, all I see is Lisa and Jerry on my screen.
Okay, my video's on. That's weird.
So beam us in, Scotty.
So, Jimmy, did I see that you were bringing something up there?
I don't see anything.
Hey, can you see me?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, I can't see you.
We should make a motion that we not use Teams because it is not as user-friendly and doesn't always work as well as Zoom.
I don't know. I think it's a net positive if you can't see me. Just throwing that out there. So.
I second that motion. No, I'm just teasing. Teasing.
Jimmy, we saw your screen for a second, so it was working. I don't know if that was on purpose or not.
That was totally not on purpose. My bad.
Okay. It was just the historical, what is it, the report that I just had up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
History of naming and renaming. Well, let's kick this off. So, I mean, we have three topics for our subgroup: the Mount Vernon district name, the Mason district name, and Gunston. I recommend that we do the easiest one first. I don't know which one that is.
Holland Hall, probably.
Well, that's in Lee, and that's in the other work group.
What is it there?
So,
Holland Hall, we get in.
It's a precinct, right?
Yeah.
now I definitely see somebody's screen.
Can you see that hands are up?
Yeah, hands up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not calling on anybody. I mean, I'm a Hunter Mill resident, so I'm here to listen and learn, and participate when and if that happens. So just start talking.
So this is Alice. I guess the first question is, what is our threshold for deciding to recommend a name change? I mean, I'm looking at the criteria and it's pretty broad. I mean, number 4, it says, is the name associated with segregation, Jim Crow, racism, discrimination, or slave ownership? And clearly George Washington and George Mason both are associated with slave ownership, but is our bar going to be that low or not? So
that, yeah, Alice, that's a good point. The criteria was just it was supposed to be broad so that we didn't leave anything out on accident, but that's just to say we want to consider it based on these criteria. Now is when we really get into the subjectivity of how we feel about it. So I will, despite what I just said, I'm gonna walk the plank here. Unless I get some really strong convincing, I don't feel like Mount Vernon should be renamed. Like I'm a no against that recommendation. I think the community input is certainly, feels pretty strong. This is the most community input that we've had at any rack.
Excuse me, this is Matt. We had a delay with staff sending us over to the breakout rooms. Could you kind of give a wait till everyone gets in that wants to join for the Mount Vernon group?
Sure, that's fair. Absolutely.
Someone is sharing their screen. Can you stop sharing the screen?
Yeah.
There we go.
Is that maybe the problem?
Hmm?
Is that why we don't see anybody?
Someone sharing the screen.
No. I don't know what's going on. Looks like whoever has control of the room has their camera closed. At least that's what I'm seeing on my end. But if you can see us, that doesn't make sense. Sherry, mute your phone.
Yeah.
So what is everyone seeing? I'm seeing Lisa and Jerry. What are other people else?
We don't see anything here.
You
Oh, I
see, I
see.
see Lisa
Yeah,
and Jerry.
just Lisa and Jerry.
Yeah, same here.
That's
Lisa
all.
and Jerry.
Okay,
You guys
It's-
are prime time.
Well, I think because only Lee and Jerry have a camera on, and none of us do, so that's why.
I have my camera on too.
How's that?
Now it's just blank.
Yeah, you must have control, Lisa, because.
No, all I did was put the lever over my camera. I can't control anything. I think I can mute myself. I'm gonna try.
I thought you control everything.
Oh, right.
Okay,
Lisa,
Yeah.
this is Catherine Ward. Hi, Jerry.
Hi,
Hi.
Catherine.
He's still pushing a bunch of people into the work groups, and it's kind of going slow. And I think most of the folks on the line want to be in this one. So I don't know how you want to start this, but I just thought I'd mention that.
well, this is Jimmy. I put my hand up earlier. I think that people will be joining as they come in. Notably, this is just a work group. It's just a very first initial work group. It's not even the group that's going to ultimately make the decision on whether or not we even decide to suggest that an entirely different group make the decision. Seems to me, candidly, I did not think that Mason and Mount Vernon were going to be considered in the first instance. At a meeting before we ultimately came up with the idea of considering Mount Vernon and Mason, I said, well, I thought we'd probably be considering Lee and Sully and maybe Springfield because it's confusing, but I didn't see Mount Vernon and Mason as even up for consideration. That's just candidly. Now, all that being said, I think what we need to do as a group is to take seriously the criteria that we laid out and take seriously what has been consistent in a lot of these decisions on whether to change names or not. I'm not endorsing it because I think that there are meaningful distinctions that can be made between, say, George Washington and George Mason and Robert E. Lee, not the least of which the fact that George Mason wrote our Bill of Rights and George Washington was one of our founding fathers, the fact that they could not live up to their own ideals, while highly problematic, does not mean that they did not put those ideals in place in the first place, whereas someone like Robert E. Lee actually actively took up arms against America.
Well
But
said.
that being said, I think it is worth laying out, saying the other side to that, which is that Mount Vernon was a plantation where people were enslaved, and that is not good, and we don't like necessarily celebrating that. George Mason was also a slaveholder. These names evoke a past in which certain individuals were held to be property, and that's problematic. I think we can, as I said, I think we can make distinctions, but it's worth it at least to note that that is why we're even here in the first instance. But as I said, I think we can make distinctions. So with that, I will turn it over to the next person who wants to speak.
Hi, this is Catherine. May I say a few words, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Number one, thanks, Jimmy, for that information. I'd like to point out that Churchill plus other famous people, and I'll probably screw the quote, if you don't study the past, you will relive it. And Queenie made that point very clear. You cannot separate. You have to teach. You have to educate so it never happens again. That's point one. Point two, why don't we go change Fairfax? Lord Fairfax made a fortune in slave trade. So we can go down this silly, slippery slope to be politically correct and destroy anything that is of value to our children to learn. Those are the points I would like to make. Thank you for your time.
How about Washington, D.C.? I'm serious.
Well, yeah.
Well, I would like to follow up with what Catherine said, you know, about the name. To change the name, just
I'm sorry,
so.
Whoever's speaking, whenever you speak, can you please announce yourself? Because I know I can't see faces at all, and I'm not always sure who's speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is, okay, I'll turn my camera on too. All right, hold
We're
on.
not seeing the camera.
Yeah,
right?
we're not seeing names or cameras on our end.
Well, I know who it is.
I know you all see us, and I know it's,
Okay.
but for everyone in the room.
Oh, so you can't even see my camera now?
No,
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, well,
Nobody
I'm
can
gonna
see
shut it
any-
off. Okay.
Yeah, you can see
Well,
anybody's camera.
this is okay, this is Queenie Cox, and I just would like to follow up with what Catherine Ward said, particularly about the name, and also the fact that when I was speaking earlier, you know, with Gum Springs being founded by a slave that was owned by George Washington, Gum Springs, we will be celebrating 189 years. So if they want to move forward with a name change, does that mean we're not going to make 190? You know, and, you know, because it would cut off there, because there would be no connection to whatever name they come up with. And I think it's just kind of, I guess, not trying to be really bad about it, but it would be a travesty to change the name of Mount Vernon just so that certain folks, and it's not the Black folks, but certain folks can feel good. Now, you can't say gay with this gay bill coming up. So what are we going to call the slaves now that worked at Mount Vernon and that Gum Springs was founded by a slave? What are we going to call Gum Springs? It was founded by who? Not a what, because that was an individual. So the other thing too is, if you don't know your history and your past, how can you move forward?
Amen.
Right on.
I was going to add to that I think the importance of keeping the name Mount Vernon, to put a positive spin on it, is that there are so many stories that have not yet been told about Mount Vernon that will connect us more to our history and to our past. And that what we should be doing when it comes to Mount Vernon is putting more history on it, talking about contextualization, reinterpretation, adding meaning to the name. And as so many others have said far better than I, being in touch with our past and learning from it.
And let me just add, for 28 years as the Mount Vernon supervisor, I went to Mount Vernon to lay a wreath on George Washington's tomb. And also on those 28 years, we also went to a memorial to the slaves who worked at Mount Vernon, which recognizes their contribution, and laid a wreath there. But just as a matter of information, I made a phone call to the Mount Vernon estate today, and to several others, as you can tell. And they were absolutely shocked that we would consider renaming the Mount Vernon district. And as far as they are concerned, that's insulting to the history of Mount Vernon and to our cultural heritage. So I think Paul hit it right on the nose. I think this is a lost leader. I don't think that we really should spend too much more time on trying to change history and change the name of the Mount Vernon district. Obviously, I am not completely objective I've lived there only 53 years, but I think it's not something we should recommend.
Can I make a comment? This is George Becerra, representing Northern Virginia Labor Federation. I'm just going to try to keep it balanced for now, because I think at the end of the day, I think we're getting a lot of final decisions, which is not saying I don't agree. I'm just trying to get information here for the people that are here and people who will come at other meetings. So one question that comes off, I think, for the members on this committee, I just got two comments. One question first. Is when we brought up the issue of the criteria and the economic impact. I think when we go back to the bigger group, we also have to, I think we have to be uniform in everything that we do in subcommittees and also in our topical discussion. And I think this, what I heard from the folks tonight, and I think we'll hear more of, is from this area is the economic impact from an area that does not need more or less economics, correct? So that's one point, just to my committee members. You know, we're consistent, you know, when we go back and hear from other committees. That's why I'm jumping around, because I'm also trying to make sure I'm learning and hearing perspectives and also balancing it out, or if we need to throw it up in different groups. Second is, how do I balance? Like I said, I'm just asking just neutral questions. How do I balance history, right? How do I balance, I hear a lot of residents, you know, this is part of history. Don't change history. You can't do this. But if someone say that you can't cancel this, that. Now then, how do I balance that with now the other group of who, I guess the Lee and Sully with the Confederate names, and you're gonna have people might say the same thing. Like I want to make sure I get this clear. I am not saying I don't agree or disagree with what some of the comments here in this group are currently, but I'm just trying to keep it balanced for now. And then when we go to the bigger group, we also have to have that own discussion, because we need to stop always having feelings in our decision, but also at the same time be in our intellectual discussions and analysis and criteria that we do have and might modify, that it's evened out to the point of, are there weights on our criteria? You know, are there this and that? So that's what I just wanted to say. So thank you.
George, this is Catherine Ward. I'm kind of a big mouth, so let me comment real quickly. I'm not sure I understand your issue of economics. However, the amount of money that pours into the Fairfax County coffers because of tourism that come into the Mount Vernon district, not just to go to the estate, but the buses that stop at the local restaurants.
Millions each year.
You know, this is millions of dollars into the coffers. That doesn't just go into Mount Vernon district, it goes into the whole of the county coffers, which then get used for social services and all the things that are terribly important to all of us.
Oh, I agree.
Let me finish.
If we didn't hear the first meeting.
Let her finish, George.
Let me finish. And the other issue is on education. My family, part of them were Jews. You want to erase that too? No, you want to educate about it. And Queenie makes the best point of all of us. You have to teach the young people. If we stop learning, we will go backwards.
That's right.
Thank you.
Well said.
This is Matt Bell, Jerry, and Lisa. Thanks for, I guess, are you guys the head of the subcommittee? Thanks for running it. I was going to say the only name we'll accept other than Mount Vernon is the Highland District. So.
That's true.
but on a serious note, I read through the minutes. It said 13-2. The vote was to bring up Mount Vernon to be discussed as renamed. So what to all our community members on the call, I'm curious to the folks that voted to consider renaming it and why they did. I mean, it seems like everyone talking is against the renaming, but your committee voted 13-2 to bring it up. So I'm curious as to, if there's members on your committee can speak to why they voted for it. and kind of be a little transparent with the public here. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Matt, I think it's more people voted for discussion.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I'll give you an example. If we were talking about Mount Vernon. When there was an issue on the school board of the LGBTQ and it was far, far offensive, I had Dan Stroke on the school board seconded just for the fact he said, I want to hear the discussion. That doesn't mean I'm going to vote for it. So I think that is the perspective we came from, is to hear the discussion.
I can attest that
Okay,
that
thank you, George.
is
And-
exactly, that's
Yeah.
exactly why I voted, and only reason I voted in favor is for discussion and to hear out my colleagues.
Okay.
And the
And
public.
then real quick, Lisa and Jerry and other committee members, I mean, my main point was community outreach. I communicated with the Mount Vernon Citizens Association president, co-president, I'm not sure her current title, and numerous others in the community, Mount Vernon League Chamber. Today, a lot of folks have not been outreached by this group to hear about this change. So I really do think that maybe some listening sessions or something with the community would be very helpful.
Matt, you're speaking my language, and I have been shouting about that from the time we stood up the redistricting committee to present. And we just have a flyer that we're working on together with the County Public Affairs Office. It has been posted on social media. So I am 1000% with you on that.
Okay, thank you,
Can
and, Lisa and Jerry, for your efforts.
This is Karen. I just wanted to add a voice to the conversation about the historic relevance of Mount Vernon versus some of the other districts that you're talking about. If the baseline is that that it's a name of a plantation or the name of slaveholders, then we are not being intellectually honest of only talking about magisterial districts, because obviously Fairfax County, the name goes back to a major trader in slaves, and the original estate for Fairfax, Lord Fairfax, was actually Belvoir. So
Right.
your names of your, even the names of some of your precincts go all the way back to that. So I think what we want to do when we talk about the impact of names is we have to talk about the positive and the negative. And as Queenie talks about the importance of Gum Springs, and she's absolutely correct, which is why Gum Springs Museum is part of a state program that I launched of the Passport to Mount Vernon, which includes Gum Springs, includes Poet Church, includes Mount Vernon Estate, the Gunston Estate, Lorton Workhouse, and soon the Suffragettes. And so
Yes.
that is the historic relevance of Mount Vernon. And when we talk about Mount Vernon as the cultural corridor, you also have to look at the cultural corridor being not only the Memorial Highway, but what many people fail to realize is that actually Route 1 and Quander Road are part of the original pathways out of Mount Vernon to get to Alexandria City. It's also why the nation's capital was established where it was. There was a large historical debate, and it was because of its proximity to Mount Vernon that contributed to that. And so we really need to look beyond that, beyond one aspect. We need to focus on ensuring that all of our children understand the impact of that, of the role of slavery and how awful it was in the initial founding of our country. But we also have to look at the other contributions that have been made. And so I personally think that before any conversation about changing the name of Mount Vernon, you have to also think, okay, what is the if we're having the metric being slaves, then we're being dishonest by only limiting it to magisterial districts. And I, for one, don't see us changing the name of our county. I would also look at Mount Vernon was actually one of the original magisterial districts of Fairfax County. And I think, Jerry, you know this better than I because I'm not as in tune with it, but I believe that even predates. It goes back to the early 1800s.
Right.
Hey folks, this is Saif Rahman. I'm the person that put Mason District on this list, and I want to go back to the original reason of why we said we voted for this, is to have the conversation.
Right.
So I think that it's important that, and I also feel that it is important that we as a advisory committee are intellectually honest by listing the reasons for why we are not changing, or why we are pushing for not changing districts while we are pushing for changing others. So to that effect, hey, I'm someone that graduated from Mount Vernon High School, so I've got to be able to say I graduated from somewhere at some point, right? So I think what we need to do in order to be productive is to actually go about and put a criteria. Now we put a criteria of why we wanted a name considered. I think it's important to put a criteria for why we would advise against changing a name, so that it's very clear and it can be distinguished from why a name was changed, or why a name was suggested to be changed. I think that's the way that we're going to be very convincing for posterity's sake, and that we've done our work as a committee. I hear people's thoughts about this, but let's also think about another notion to this. If you go to Philadelphia, where the Liberty Bell is, there's actually a display that's across the street from the Liberty Bell that talks about how, our first president decided to keep moving some slaves around so that they would never get out of bondage, because of certain laws in Philadelphia while he was in residence there. So I think, to be intellectually honest, it behooves us to say, okay, but we think the preponderance of evidence shows that Washington was a better man, and that there were certain things that he did that we have to highlight, that all of our forefathers had some issues with, but at the same time that this was not as bad as essentially going against the Union and trying to desecrate the Constitution by fomenting rebellion. So I just think that we should lay out why, unemotionally, why we don't want to change a name according to criteria, so that it can be clear when it comes to advising of changing names, of like if it's Sully or Lee or otherwise. Thank you.
I just have to give a little bit of pushback. This is Lisa Sales, because this is a feeling thing. This is an emotional thing. So to make these sort of decisions devoid of emotion, I don't think is possible. And I will say too, the one thing we did bring up that I was insistent upon was economic impact to the district. And what does that mean? And I heard Catherine mention it. And so I wanted to not fail to address it, that the economic impact to changing the name as well to Mount Vernon Lee, to any other names, Mount Vernon Lee Chamber of Commerce or any other names, that's going to be quite costly too for businesses, small businesses, and people. So I just wanted to point that out as a thought for consideration.
Yeah. And let me finish. And it's for that reason, obviously, I think the committee can tell that maybe I've been making a few phone calls today. And one of my phone calls was to the Mount Vernon Lee Chamber of Commerce, and they are absolutely, again, shocked, as was Mount Vernon Estate, that we would consider doing this as far as the adverse economic impact that it'll have on.
But Jerry, they're going to have to change the Lee portion of the name, though. No.
Yes, I know that, but I hope that they would keep Mount Vernon.
This is Jimmy Bierman.
Alice, the Mason District representative. I just want to check in. We've heard a lot from Mount Vernon residents, are there any Mason District residents on the call that would like to make some comments? Okay, just wanted to check. I personally have not heard any complaints regarding the name Mason District. So I don't know, Saif, if you've heard anything. I don't.
No, Alex, I had made the recommendation for Mason because of Mason Hill at the time, and when we got the information that it was specifically named after George Mason, it's different than Mason's Hill, because Mason's Hill, where the actual district headquarters sits, or where it's very close to, similar to Munson Hill, were named after people that were affiliated with the Confederacy. Mason's Hill, actually the grandson of George Mason, I guess. He had a house there or something to that effect. But when the committee, when the historical commission came out with the report saying that it was specifically named after George Mason, which was the Washington Post report from the 50s, that kind of deflates whatever we were thinking. But I still think that we need to document why we are deciding to keep, just so that it's clear. I
agree with that. I think we need to lay out the reasons why we are not recommending a change and clearly lay that out. Yep. Thanks.
Exactly. And I agree. I think the economic impact needs to be considered. I think, I know emotional and kind of, the clearly Jerry's called a lot of people, but I think that we should, so that we can actually stand upright when we're looking at all of these, when we say we want to change Lee District because of this, or Sully District because of plantation, someone may come back and say, well, Mount Vernon was a plantation, why aren't you changing that? And I think we should document what differentiates Mount Vernon from that, so that it's a strong argument.
May I ask a quick question, Lisa? There's deadlines. My understanding is, when is this group supposed to meet? How do you plan on putting the package together? And I understand the deadline for the RAC to get their recommendations to the BOS is March 1. So could you lay that out for all of us, please?
Look, I'll take that for just, this is Jimmy Bierman, just one second. I would like to suggest that we just call the question here. I don't think we have any support for changing either of these names.
You're right.
There has been no evidence of anyone having any support for changing these names. There have been clear lines that have been drawn for why we would not change these names, but we might change other names. And I think that after this conversation tonight, we don't need to have another conversation on this one. I think this one's pretty clear. I will only say one thing to push back on some of the conversation that has happened tonight, and also to, I think, put in context what we are even doing as a advisory committee. History is full of name changes. Istanbul was once Constantinople. New York was once New Amsterdam. There's a whole song about it. History is full of name changes, and they reflect the beliefs of people at that time, at that moment in time. They do not, in my view, in any way erase the history that occurred before. What we would be saying if we were to change a name would be that at this moment in time, this group of people in this portion of history believes that what had happened before was so negative that we'd rather use a different name for whatever we're doing. It's not a invitation to erase prior history. Name changes don't erase history. Now, all that being said, I see zero reasons espoused tonight that we are at that historical moment where we think that this name should change. I see none. In fact, I think that the historical moment that we are living in draws pretty significant distinctions from what could be considered, say, the lost cause of the Confederacy, an actual movement throughout the South to try and venerate a Confederate cause, and the home of our first president or the name of the person who drafted the Bill of Rights. I think that's all clear. And so I would suggest that this be this subgroup's last conversation on this, and that we make a recommendation to the rest of the RAC that we do not change these names. Thank you.
If that is a motion, of course, I would.
I was just going to say, all those in favor?
Yeah, of course, I would say, and I think,
Hey,
Can
I
I
just got a
say
point
one
of question, Jerry.
yes.
This is Matt Bell. I think Sheriff, I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. There's a gentleman earlier that said it'd be good to make a kind of report as to why you're doing it or why you're not. And so that I was just curious if that gentleman still wanted to do that if you removed it. I thought his idea was
Hey,
valid,
Matt,
having been a Mount
yeah.
Vernon grad.
Matt, I'm going to jump in. Hey, it's Paul already. Hi. This has been really great. Just quick FYI that there's 10 minutes before I'm going to call everybody back in, but we can keep going. So no need for any motions in this group. The motions are reserved only for, committee votes.
We were joking, Paul. We were joking.
Matt,
I'm trying to get a couple for you. But one thing that I am going to ask every work group to do is to put in writing. So I can't write a report all by my lonesome. I'm going to ask for help. So each group will have to put, if it ends up being bullet points, that's fine. If you want to write 15 pages, terrific. I'm just the editor. The board's going to have to mull over it. So the conclusions, what Jimmy said is right. Like, I think there's a pretty strong consensus here for both. Yeah. But to Safe's point, that consensus needs to be documented in some way, because I am also equally afraid of exactly that. Like, we need to spell out why we are not recommending things.
To that point, can anybody hear me?
Yes, Kathy.
Yes. Gorgeous. George, James Madison University recently did big name changes of many buildings that were named after Confederate persons. And they kept the name, of course, of its James Madison University because of his contributions to the country and his role, even though he was a slaveholder. And maybe some of their thought, and it was a very thoughtful process, might help this committee in saying, this is why we want to justify keeping Mount Vernon.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I would like to say one thing about the notification, and that is I really appreciate our co-chairs for the DEM Mount Vernon Committee, Matt Bell and Jeannie, because had it not been for the Mount Vernon Dems and those two co-chairs, I would not have known about this meeting tonight. So I think that this subcommittee co-chairs, Jerry and Lisa, is for you to take back to the rest of the body that they need to do better about outreach to the community, because they're making these decisions, recommendations, or whatever with limited folk.
Queenie,
Queenie, sorry to.
Wait, let me just finish, Paul, please. I just wanted to say that we have been shouting that, particularly me, from the rooftop before we became the renaming advisory, when we were the redistricting, that the outreach, you can never have enough outreach to the residents and make them, or inform them and let them know where we're meeting and what we're doing. And I completely agree with you.
Yeah, so Queenie, just I'm gonna pass the mic back to you in a second. So one of the very first things we did at our first meeting was to pass a resolution asking the board to enact an outreach strategy plan, and that got sent to them. That was sent to them last week, and then I haven't reviewed today's, the 6 hours of today's BOS meeting, but I am certain that they positively received it, and the Office of Public Affairs has already put together a plan that they shared with me that outlines exactly, who, what, where, when, why, and all of the outreach. So your point is extremely prescient, and the wheels are spinning right now in motion.
Well, I really appreciate it, Matt, because otherwise, I can't see folks on this call, but I think I'm safe in saying that in the Mount Vernon, this subgroup, that if there are 2 Black folks in here, that is a lot. So had we not heard about it, then the decision and the recommendations would be made by our slave owners.
Yay, Queenie.
Queenie, I don't have any slaves on my farm.
This is safe. May I make a recommendation? I agree with Jimmy that we don't need to do a lot of work, but I do think that it's important to document. I recommend that maybe we have 2 people work on a draft document of why we heard, or what are the reasons we heard for not making the changes, and what differentiates these 2 district names from the others being considered, and adding the economic and other considerations on there, and we just put it up as bullet points, and have everyone kind of in this group say, hey, we're for this. But I also think that it's important as part of those recommendations. Now, this is my personal opinion on the names in particular, that we do recommend a full, that the district names talk about the history, the full history, the good and the bad, or the nuanced on the district names, so that we are actually educating at the same time. So I'm happy to help write. If I know Lisa did some writing last time on I don't know if Lisa wants to do more, but I'm happy.
She just worked on the outreach flyer, so happy to hand that over to you, Safe.
Yeah, so I'm happy if someone else wants to. I'm happy to help work on something, and then we can have everyone kind of review and approve a draft, and then we can send it back to the whole committee. But I just think that we do need to document so that it's clear, and that this equivalency doesn't come up when their whole report goes out to the public.
Safe, at the last meeting, I suggested a timeline in which we would have this meeting, and then we'd dole out amongst ourselves the folks to essentially write up the PowerPoint slides that get presented to the rest of the committee. And I also suggested that we cancel Thursday's meeting and give it a full week. And then we start with each meeting being presentations of said slides. So I think obviously we should document the conversation that was had. And I'm happy to draft said slides as long as I don't have to do it by Thursday. Give me a week.
I'm happy to help, Jimmy. And I agree with you. Thursdays it's tough because I've got several things going on. But at the same time, people have to kind of, I guess, doesn't the whole group have to just say, okay, yeah, we like this?
Yes.
Sure.
We can also do that at the Tuesday meeting.
Sure.
Well, I mean, so there is another way to do it. I mean, Jimmy, if you want to work on something, or we can work on something together and then co-share it, maybe we send it out over individual emails to the people that are in this committee, and individually people, so that we're meeting the FOIA guidelines, whatever, and people can just say, hey, I like it. But hold on, I have a question, Paul. If we give access to committee members individually to a shared document, does that violate FOIA?
Yes, it does. Great question. So no emails can't be sent back and forth without more than 24-hour delay. Otherwise, it constitutes a conversation. A shared document can only be shared between 2 people. Anything that involves more than 2 people. So I know that's cumbersome, but but that's the way we've got to do it. And if we have to have an in-person work session that, will constitute a full meeting that we can then, maybe, if there's quorum, which is only 4 people, so that's pretty easy. And then the rest are virtual, then we could collaborate on, on a shared Google Doc in real time with some folks at home, and then, like myself, and I'll ask for 3 other people to meet me at the government center or wherever. So we can figure it out, but the short answer is yes, there are a lot of barriers that we have to do, that we have to, adhere to, or not barriers, but, rules to keep transparency alive.
Well, Jimmy, do you want
Another idea is that
between you and me to get this started? You okay with that?
I think Alice is trying to chime in.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alice.
yeah, I was just going to say another idea is, 2 people could draft the initial draft, maybe send it to staff, and then staff can email everyone. Would that work in terms of FOIA?
No, that's a workaround. But
As an attachment for review, they can send it, Paul, not to send back.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is once it becomes a public document, then everyone can see it. So what I suggest is Safe and Jimmy, like one or you, either one of you, or, a committee member, step up, put together the first draft list. You can share it with one other, you could have 5 different emails going.
Well, we can share it, be people, right?
What?
But you can't like collaborate actively. Like you can't be, refereeing, like playing, train conductor between conversations. That would be not okay. But you put that list together, you share it so committee members have an idea of what's going on. We do the week, or, either Thursday or next week, we get back together. If you share it as a public document with Nat, who can then put it up on the web, then all the committee members can have a chance to look at it. And, in the meantime, you won't be having active conversations, but they could be drafting their own, track changes that could be merged into one document.
Okay,
So
Jimmy, are you okay if we just do it and have it presented for next Tuesday?
It's got to say on it draft before it goes out to the public, but yeah, that's fine.
All right, so I'll get with you.
Okay.
So how would the public get it?
It would be included in the meeting materials on Tuesday, and that would be public document.
And we have a website as well that's being stood up to post these documents, Queenie.
Okay, what's the website? Was it that?
If you just Google Fairfax County Redistricting.
Oh, okay, I got it.
And in the meantime, if anyone has specific reasons, please do not hesitate to email Jimmy or I.
And how do we do that? We don't know how to find you.
Sorry, you would email redistricting@fairfaxcounty.gov, and it would be distributed by staff.
Okay, so we can put some of the comments we've made and anything else historical we think about to give you guys some other information. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And do I understand there won't be a meeting on Thursday and you guys are going to slip until the following Tuesday?
Paul, are we going to address that in the plenary?
Nat is gonna close the work groups in 30 seconds, and then
Okay.
we're
Thank you very much.
That's what I figured. Thank you.
Thank you for the folks from the public that chimed in.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
People.
So is this the end of the meeting? So
Yeah, we're going to be pushed back into the plenary session in a couple of seconds here, and then we'll be in the larger group again.
so I'm new to this.
Don't go away,
technology.
Jeannie. Just
Just
stick
hang
around.
in here. Okay,
not-
okay.
The meeting typically doesn't end till about 8 o'clock each time. We go from 6 to 8 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday, unless we determine otherwise in the meetings.
Okay. So I just stay here.
Here.
Yeah, and you should be beamed back automatically.
Oh, beam me up, Charlie.
Spotty,
And Scotty too.
Charlie.
Sorry.
I have no idea.
Sorry, Charlie.
Hey, Alice, are you still on here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can we, I'm going to reach out to some of the groups in Mason. I think it.
I can't hear you. Saif?